Hi, I'm sorry I'm not seeing you in person, but I'm glad you're listening to this presentation at the time you're touring colleges. How perfect. Looking at colleges and deciding where you want to go is an exciting time in your life. The financial aspects of paying for college are extremely important to keep in mind, even when you found that perfect school for you. College is a major investment in your future, and as with any investment, you need to weigh the costs and returns of the choices that you will make. Even if you receive a full scholarship, there are likely expenses that wouldn't be covered by it. Emotions go into any college choice. What I'd like to do in these few moments is to ask you to step back once you found the colleges that you want to go for and see what other decisions might enter in. It's always good to compare the schools that you're considering to some of the other schools, both financially and with other measurements. And we'll go into that in a little bit. And I also will show you a couple of websites that I hope you'll check out. So do you remember all those months ago when we first met? And we were talking about establishing your goals and visions. And once you had done that, you looked at your budget. You established a budget. Well, here are some expenses. Some of them you're already paying, but some new ones that you will certainly pay when you go to college. And rather than your vision in terms of finances, it's really how can your finances help you meet your vision and goals for your education and your future. So before you apply for financial aid, it's good to have a general sense of all of the expenses that you would incur at a given school. Luckily, you don't have to guess what these expenses are. Colleges, as a matter of law, must post what is known as the cost of attendance online. You'll see that in the upper left-hand block. Cost of attendance is the total amount, not including grants and scholarships, that it will cost you to go to a given school. The cost of attendance includes tuition and fees, housing and meals, allowances for books, supplies, transportation, loan fees, and dependent care. It also includes miscellaneous and personal expenses such as allowance for the rental or purchase of a personal computer. Also costs related to a disability and reasonable costs for eligible study abroad programs. In the next block, you see total grants and scholarships. Student aid funds that do not have to be repaid. Grants are often need-based. Scholarships are usually merit-based. Occasionally, you may have to pay back all or part of a grant if, for example, you were to withdraw from school before finishing a semester. So subtracting these two gets you to net costs, an estimate of the actual costs that you or your family will need to pay to cover education expenses at a given school. Now let's look at the bottom line, the options to pay for the net costs. One is by work study. This is a federal student aid program that provides part-time employment while you're enrolled in a college to help pay for your education expenses. Then there's loans, borrowed money that must be repaid with interest. Loans from the federal government typically have a lower interest rate than loans from private lenders. Federal loans listed from most advantageous to least advantageous are called federal Perkins loans, then direct subsidized loans, direct unsubsidized loans, and then direct plus loans. You can find out more about federal loans at studentaid.gov, and we'll be discussing these a little bit more later in the presentation. And then finally, in the last block is the family contribution, also referred to as expected family contribution, a number used by a school to calculate how much financial aid you are eligible to receive, if any. It's based on the financial information you provide in your free application for federal student aid or FAFSA form. It's not the amount of money your family will have to pay for college, nor is it the amount of federal student aid you will receive. I'd like us to take a look at this Department of Education's college scorecard. website because I'd like to familiarize with you. I think it's a good place for you to go in order to compare some of the schools that you're considering. You can compare it on such things as the graduation rate. And there, by graduation rate, they mean the number of people that graduated within 150% of expected time. So for a 4-year school, it would be 6 years. Loan default rate, because that gives you an idea of if it's high, it might mean that the students aren't faring that well when they come out of school in terms of getting a job. And then the median borrowing that students take at a particular school. So let's go to the website. All right, now we're at the U.S. Department of Education's college scorecard. And you can see that you can search for your schools under field of study, a given school, a school name, location, academic fields. This particular search that we're on right here was pre-populated, but it will give you a good sense of some of the information you can find by going to this site. So example, it gives you graduation rate for the schools, gives you the average annual cost for each of them, the median earnings. And then if you go in and view more detail, it can give you, well, above, as you can see, it gives you exact location of the school on a map, which is sometimes helpful, and some more financial information. And then you can also do some drop down on graduation retention, financial aid and debt, typical earnings, student body, and test scores. So I hope you do visit the site. It seems to be very helpful. And now we'll go back to the slide program. Let's take a look at that free application for federal student loan aid, or FAFSA form that we talked about earlier. Running parallel to your college search is your financial affordability of college search. And this form, the FAFSA form, will be something you will fill out at least probably every year. So once you've answered the questions on this form, you will be provided with the expected family contribution and your student award letter. Just as an aside, for next year, the expected family contribution will be renamed to Student Aid Index, which is more descriptive, I think, really. So the thing to keep in mind with a FAFSA form is that deadlines are very important. There's the deadline for the form itself, or the federal deadline. Often a state will require a different deadline, and then a school where you're applying may also have another deadline. So to give you, the federal deadlines are as follows. October 1 is when it first opens. And you probably will want your form ready as soon as the deadline opens, because all of financial aid is given out on a first come, first served basis. So you want to be early in line for it. The actual deadline is until the following summer, but October 1 is when the form opens up. Now, schools sometimes will have deadlines that are tied into the application dates. So November 1, perhaps for the early application date, and February 1 for the regular application dates. But in any event, you definitely want to have this ready as soon as you can. Now, there are about 108 questions on this form. A lot of the answers come from tax returns and from bank account information. You'll be happy to know that next year, from 108 questions, it will be reduced to 36 questions. So hopefully it will be easier to fill out. So you'll become very familiar with this form, I would say. There is another form that some schools require called the CSS form, College Scholarship Service form. This is maintained by the College Board, the people that give you the SATs. So the schools will let you know if they require that form too, but both of them provide similar information and reports. So let's take a look at the student aid report, which is one of the outcomes of your FAFSA. And this is it's usually an electronic form, and it gives you some basic information about your eligibility for federal student aid. It also includes the answers to your questions that you provided on the FAFSA. And then it will list the student aid that they recommend that you receive, and the total cost of attendance, and then some ways you can pay by loans for, or grants or scholarships for the amount. So what I want to do is take one of these forms and break it down little by little so that we can take a closer look. So at the top of the form, at the student aid report, you would see the total amount of financial aid that the school is recommending you receive. It's broken down by the type and by the semesters. Now, everything in this top category is really good news to you because scholarships and grants do not have to be repaid. So obviously, as much of you can get in the top part is of a great advantage to you. The Pell Grant, just so you know, for this year, it caps out at $6,495. My understanding is that's supposed to increase for next year. That is based on financial need. One thing you should do when you receive a scholarship is to find out whether it's for just the 1 year or whether it's for 4 years. And what are the criteria that the schools require in order for you to keep the scholarship? The same could be true with the grant. So I know you'd be excited when you get your scholarship and grant amounts, but just find out if there's any sort of strings attached to those. Next, they will list your loans. Now, it's interesting that loans are included as sort of a subtraction to your total cost, because in reality, you do have to pay these back and with interest. So you shouldn't really look at these like free money, like the grants and scholarship, but rather, well, it's nice that they're giving me these loans, but I know I'll have to pay them back. The subsidized loans are based on financial need. And the good thing about the federal direct subsidized loans is that the government will pay your interest while you're in school and for up to 6 months upon graduation. Direct unsubsidized loans are not based on need, and the interest accrues all along. And if you don't pay it while you're in school, it gets tacked onto the amount of the loan at the end, and it can be a rather surprising amount. So the suggestion there is if you have a direct unsubsidized loan, try to the extent you can to keep up with the interest. Now, another thing to know is if these loan amounts are more than you need, you don't need to accept these just because they've offered them. And then they'll give you, again, this total cost of attendance or the sticker price of the school, as if you will, broken down by the direct billable costs and the indirect costs. So the direct billable costs are exactly as they sound, the costs that need to be paid directly to the school. Indirect costs cover expenses like books, supplies, and transportation, and these costs related to attending schools but aren't paid directly to the school. So the school is roughly estimating the indirect costs that you will incur. You may have a better sense of it than what they put on this form. This is probably more of an average to them. And then you'll come down with the balance, what wasn't covered by loans, grants, scholarship. So the balance of the total cost that wasn't covered. And usually the school will have some kind of a payment plan, 10 payments per year, 12 payments per year. They may have other payment plans for that. You should find out if there's a fee involved in that. Is interest being charged? If you decide to go the payment plan route. So now at the bottom of this form, they'll ask you to accept the offer. So you'd need to follow the instructions provided in the award letter to actually accept the funds. And it's best to do that soon after receiving the award letter, as soon as you decide you're going to probably go to that school. Now, you're not bound to the fact that you've accepted this until you actually send in your enrollment deposit. So even if you accept offers from more than one school, keep in mind it's not binding until you pick the school. You also should only accept that which you need. In terms of if you don't need all the loans amount, don't accept them all. And the other thing to keep in mind is you can appeal. If you feel, if your circumstances change, certainly appeal, or appeal to see if there's more aid available. It's always worth asking. At the bottom of the form, they'll usually have work study if the school participates in the program, since it is a federal program, and it would allow you to earn money while you're in college. This money is not directly applied to tuition, so you need to keep that in mind. You'll receive it in the form of a paycheck, like any other job. A lot of times schools will put work study in with the other financial aid, so students think that another $2,500 is going to come off the bill, but that's not really the case. Work study jobs are not guaranteed to every eligible student. You'd have to apply and be hired for these positions. If you do secure a work study job, the amount of aid listed in your award letter is also not guaranteed. The number represents the maximum amount you'll be able to receive through work study. On average, students need to work between 8 to 10 hours per week to earn the maximum benefit. Of course, that number varies according to how much they're paying. So work study, it's great that they'll try to participate in that program, but just know that you'll have more homework too if you decide to participate in it. So exciting time, lots of ways, lots of things to think about. On this slide, what I'd like to do is share another website that I think is really important for you to know about and to probably look at early in your college search. So this is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's website that has a lot of useful information in terms of your understanding your financial aid offer, repaying your student loans, student financial guides, student banking. You'll see over here, there's a link to finding your FAFSA deadlines. You can even link to the FAFSA application itself off of this website. Just a lot of, I think, really important information that this is another good website to go to. And it was consumerfinance.gov/paying for college. So with that, I'm probably going to end here. What I'd like to say is you're at a really exciting time in your life. You get to launch your personal dream. True, there are a lot of decisions to make, but it is exciting. You have friends, family, and other resources and support to help sort out those choices. Make use of them. In the end, it's your journey, but it's always to have pre-journey and during journey consultants to help you on your way. I wish you all the best for your exciting futures, and thank you.